was like a thing that would shoot out the dodgeballs and super fast. So for some reason, they had cranked this thing up to like the highest speed, but in the movie, you're not gonna really read that. So they put me in front of it. They're like, we're gonna hit you a few times, you're gonna catch it. And the first thing came and it was so kind of powerful. I go, guys, this is crazy. Like, no one's gonna be able to tell if the thing's going 80 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour or 40. I said, you gotta tone this thing down. Like, this is dangerous. Only to come to find out that the great Justin Long had already been there for an hour getting hit by this machine at full speed multiple times. Swingers. I liked John right away. He was, very funny. He was with the Improv Olympic in Chicago, and I was with that same improv company prior to him being there. I had already moved to LA, so we had a lot of common ground.
Do you dig that? We're going to Vegas, Mike.
Vegas! You think we get there by midnight?
Money, we're gonna be up 500 by midnight.
Ah, Vegas!
Vegas, baby, Vegas!
It was funny because John wrote the script, and a lot of the jokes and funny lines that I had said in real life were in the movie. So a lot of the expressions and things that are in the film was stuff that I used to say just joking around with him. But yeah, the character was sort of based on an experience of John, did go through a breakup when he moved to town. And I definitely took him out. That was the neighborhood I hung out in. I used to love to go see those old big bands and swing bands and all those places where I lived in that area. So those were the places I would go to. A lot of the ex-punk bands started playing swing music. It was incredible to go see these 15-piece bands play original swing music.
And it's you and me and the bottle makes three tonight. And it's you and me and the bottle makes three tonight.
Hi, Frank.
The ladies?
The ladies.
So I definitely took John to those neighborhoods and out to those places. And then with girls and stuff, I was encouraging to him about, dating and this kind of stuff in a positive way. That stuff was all true, but then for a comedy, it's, over-exaggerated. Not everything that happens in the movie was what happened in real life. So there was a lot of, the comedic styles of Trent, the phraseology, the way that he talked was all, characters I would slip into at times when you're joking around or expressions I would use.
There's nothing wrong with letting the girls know that you're money and that you want to party.
Ready to order?
Yeah.
That stuff was all stuff that I had actually said, so it was kind of odd in reading it originally because a lot of the jokes and stuff were just stuff that came from us hanging out and things that I said. The Lost World, Jurassic Park.
Greenpeace, what drew you there?
Women. 80% female Greenpeace.
Yeah, it was a different experience for sure. I always liked Steven's movies. As a kid, so many of them, whether it was E.T. or Close Encounters or Jaws, were so impactful. So I remember meeting him and talking film with him a lot. We would have these meetings and we'd just talk about old Westerns or movies, and he was very generous. He was very engaging with a much younger person who was excited about the films, but we would just sit and talk about these things and hear his perspective. So it really was a lot of fun. And then going to do the movie was a very different experience. As you said, Swingers, we kind of shot that thing. We didn't have permits, we were kind of stealing shots. And then obviously you go to a budget of a film that kind of is allowing of everything.
Hey, watch his head. No,
honey,
watch his
hurt.
No, honey, no.
Get the table.
Step back. Watch his heel, too.
Jeff Goldblum was great. Julianne Moore was great. We had Pete Postlethwaite, who I liked very much, was in that film. And it was just a different exercise, being able to look at something that was not a dinosaur and pretending it was just, an exercise in imagination. Psycho. Well, that was like a Warhol painting almost. I had liked Gus's movies like Drugstore Cowboy and Private Idaho, so it was more about working with him than it was even doing Psycho. At that age, I didn't really think about remaking a movie so much. It's like, an artist would cover a song and then another artist would cover a song, and this was a movie that Gus liked, so I was really excited to go work with him. And then once the process started, it was odd because there was moments when we sort of were gonna do it as a shot for shot, and then there was times when we would drift where it wasn't exactly that. It was an interesting exercise as an actor to explore because there were certain times we were looking to match what was done, and you had to find your own internal way of getting there without it feeling, like you're just sort of executing it. And so the exercise of that was really interesting, and I kind of enjoyed doing it. I thought it was just like an interesting experience to have. Old school. A lot of it was on the page. Todd's a terrific writer and great with comedy, so the part that was interesting was the studio didn't know if I could do comedy, Because at that point I had done a lot more, having done Swingers and then Lost World, I just sort of instinctually gravitated to more kind of character-based stuff. And Return to Paradise or Clay Pigeons, I had been doing much kind of more smaller indies. But I hadn't done a lot of mainstream comedy, so I think he maybe had to show them an interview I did on a talk show or something to make them comfortable that I could do the comedy. So that was interesting for me because I had sort of come from comedy.
Max, can you ear muff it for me? We are gonna get so much ass here, it's gonna be sick. I'm talking like crazy, like boy band ass.
The fun of that character for Beanie was really, you know, you love your friend a lot, so that goes a long way with audiences and just in general, that his heart's in the right place for his friend. But then you just start to build things that are specific. He's kind of a hustler who is ambitious with Speaker City, you know, trying to build this empire, but it's you know, Speaker City.
Speaker City, which is slashing prices on everything from beepers to DVD players. Give a warm Harrison University welcome to my pal and your favorite, Mr. Snoop Dogg.
He was so encouraging of his friend to go and have a relationship. He was sort of excited for the big parties and to get the stuff going with the college girls and stuff as a guy that was at the time was 30. But ultimately, you know, he really loved his wife. He wasn't going to do anything to kind of jeopardize that. So I thought what was fun about him was he had the support of a friend. He liked to have a good time. He was not completely happy in his marriage, but he was ultimately a guy that valued his marriage and wanted to try to make it work. Dodgeball. That was one of the best scripts I ever read. That thing changed not as much as other scripts had. It was really well done. And what I liked about it was, in Old School and then later in Wedding Crashers, I'm not the lead, so I get to be a little more wild. In Dodgeball, the character really grounds the audience. He's kind of a sane man in an insane world. Stiller's character's so specific, and all the guys that go to Average Joe's Gym are really specific and unique.
Look at the show! Enjoy the show!
It's a bad time, I could always come back.
So I thought that it was important for the character to kind of have this personality, you know, be a likable guy, again, very loyal, begrudgingly so to the people that depended on him. Not that he was wanting to be there for them, but he just ultimately couldn't help them. He would rather have found a way to not have these responsibilities, but once he got connected to all the guys at the gym, he could not be there for them. And so I think for Peter LaFleur, he's kind of the eyes of the audience. You're meeting all these interesting people at the Dodgeball gym. You're coming in conflict with Stiller. And so he's sort of the grounded character on a journey that's, the world is much more kind of bizarre than he is.
People have different translations for different things, and that's a special bond that you have with your mail order wife. I think that's nice. Thank you, it's fine.
I remember showing up, and they had Rawson, who was the director, I think played Division III sports. And a lot of times the case will be with guys that kind of played sports later, but not like big time. They overly want to do stuff. Like for him, it was so important to overly throw the ball and overly do this. There was a scene where they had this kind of like, I guess you would use it for baseballs. It was like a thing that would shoot out the dodgeballs and super fast. So for some reason, they had cranked this thing up to like the highest speed, but in the movie, you're not gonna really read that. So they put me in front of it. They're like, we're gonna hit you a few times, you're gonna catch it. And the first thing came and it was so kind of powerful. I go, guys, this is crazy. Like no one's gonna be able to tell if the thing's going 80 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour or 40. I said, you gotta tone this thing down. Like this is dangerous. Only to come to find out that the great Justin Long had already been there for an hour getting hit by this machine at full speed multiple times. So he definitely had a strong commitment to going through the pain of the experience. Wedding Crashers. That screenplay changed quite a bit, including the structure. The original version, I think, was both Owen and my character crashing the marriage of Bradley Cooper and Rachel McAdams. It wasn't me and Isla getting married and then him coming to us. So we had a really good idea. Owen's very funny and a good writer, and David's terrific. So we really just kind of rebuilt it. It was an interesting time. Like it started with Old School, where we were able to do these more hard R comedies and be left alone. No one was telling us you can't say that. We were kind of young kids trying to make each other laugh. And in doing so, we're able to create something that felt authentic. And Crashers was the same thing. We were really left alone to kind of build these characters, create these flawed guys, have those 3 weeks to sort of pitch ideas, write scenes. You know, like me wanting to keep the painting when I leave, that was Owen's idea. he was like, it'd be so funny after that guy drew the painting that it means something to you now that you want to take it with you. So we really used that time to kind of build the scenes out, play with the structure of the movie, and I think it translates, you know, having that time when we got into those scenes. Swingers was similar because we rehearsed that movie so much trying to get it made. So I think having that time to really dive in and have a little bit of ownership over the lines and the dialogue.
I'm looking all over for you. I gotta get out of here pronto. I got a stage 5 clinger.
I need more time.
Did you hear what I just said to you? Stage 5 virgin clinger? Let's go. I'm gonna start the car. I'm serious. Let's go.
I think that really translated in the screen. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it was really enjoyable. The breakup? You know, it was my idea of the breakup, and what it was is I was being sent a lot of rom-coms. I had never done one prior to it, and I thought, gosh, you know, it's always kind of the same motor. These guys, whatever, then the guy goes and apologizes, and the girl takes him back, and they end up happily ever after. And so I thought, well, how about two people that really love each other, but they just don't have the skills yet, either of them, to make the relationship work. I had found in my own life that sometimes you could really like someone, but neither of you are either ready to be in something more serious or you just don't have the maturity or the skills to handle situations, and you can end up kind of ruining the relationship.
Don't tell me what I am or are not doing.
Oh, what you are not doing? Let's just learn some English.
Once you ruin it, it's hard to go back. Like once someone feels like the other person has broken trust or let them down, hurt their feelings, even though you may still like them, you just can't go back to that, and you learn your lessons from that experience, and hopefully you don't repeat the same mistakes in the next relationship. So I had played a lot of characters at the time that were kind of fun, but I really was driving to have this film where the guy wasn't confident or mature enough to address things well, but you could tell his heart was in the right place, and then the girl would be a little gamey. She wasn't totally mature either. It's sort of both of their fault. She's manipulating the situation more than one should. They're both somewhat immature. And that you would build to this moment that when the guy finally got to that revelation, that he was able to go to her hat in hand, which you had seen so many times, that the girl had gotten to a place where it was burnt out. He had let her down so many times that she just wasn't able to reciprocate in a way. And that the guy in the moment would then kind of have this wisdom and dignity to be accepting of that. It was awkward. There was another guy outside, and he sort of really authentically, you could tell he moved past his immaturities because he handled that moment so gracious. And then the tragedy at the end of the movie, in a way, was here were these two people who both kind of liked each other, but they both handled it really terribly. And then obviously with the ending, when they sort of see each other, to realize, you know, you're better off at the other side of it. It never feels like it when you go through a breakup like that, but ultimately, having gone through those experiences are sometimes the things that put you in a better place to both pick someone who's in a better place for where you're at and also have better skills not to ruin a relationship. And then the question for people was, well, did it work out between those two or not, which, you know, is up to everyone to decide. I think if they met each other at the stage they were at once they went through the experience, they probably would have worked out. And that was really the point, was that they both had come out of it, even though it was painful, more equipped for relationships than when the movie started. And that had a big table scene that took a lot of days to film as well, where John Michael Higgins, who's terrific, with John Michael Higgins gets up and sings in my face, Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Your every step you take, you, and that's the only way.
True Detective. You know, having done swingers and roles like that, the characters are very confident and they're very articulate and, you know, able to move with a lot of self-value. And then with Frank, what I found what I did was in the early stages of the piece, he's trying to go corporate, he's trying to go legitimate. And he's using big words and stuff, but I felt that the character didn't really have a grasp on it, that he was over his skis. And so I really tried to, you know, as the character come off confident and proficient, but actually underneath it, to trying to be something he wasn't. So it was interesting to start that piece where you have this guy who is not really self-assured, although he's this kind of foreboding character. There's a rage and an anger in him. You see a lot of, you know, hurt in him. There's a little kid in there that doesn't feel loved. And he's sort of, you find him in a moment where he's trying really hard, but he has a lot of self-doubt and things are slipping away from him. And then as the piece progresses, he starts to become far more assured and confident, he kind of reverts back to what he was trying to escape. He knows who he is when he's someone who's going to be more violent, or this is the way I handle things. Now I understand this, and this is probably where I always saw my life going. He's going to protect the one thing he loves, but he's prepared at that point to face his ends. Hacksaw Ridge. Well, you know, I always put a lot of research, even in the earlier movies, with studying, you know, either people or learning about different experiences. For Hacksaw Ridge, I never did a lot of press for it, but I had gone a lot, starting with Dodgeball, taking movies overseas to the troops. I had gone to Iraq and Afghanistan and was able to show the movies, which was funny. I thought, gosh, these guys and girls are stuck over here in this terrible situation. Well, maybe these movies are funny. Maybe I can go take Dodgeball over and show it to the troops. I didn't realize when I got there that a lot of them had copies of the movie for me to sign, even though the movie was just coming out in America, because there was pirated versions that would get sold overseas that were like, you know, have someone's head in the video while they were watching the movie. I just went into a very kind of deep dive about what was it like, these sergeants and the drill sergeants and the preparation when it's actually wartime and how these things kind of play out, and then sort of tried to build out a specific character in this situation where you're dealing with someone, you know, like Desmond, who you can tell is, you know, you don't even know if he's telling the truth at first. Is this guy even honest? Is he presenting what's real? And then having the concern for the group at that time as your highest demand, which is these kids are going over to fight and kill people. They got to stay alive. And this may be hard on this individual, but we really need to do what's best for the unit to live. And this guy's not going to be an asset to anybody. He's going to get someone killed. And then, which was true to real life, being swayed by this person's faith, his belief, realizing he really does have a conviction in what he's doing, and to sort of be won over by this kid, and ultimately the journey that Desmond Doss went on was so incredible. I never heard the story. So it was really kind of building out, you know, and then finding your own individual personality with that, with how you would kind of approach it and put yourself in those circumstances. Brawl on Cell Block 99. Well, Zoller is such a great writer, and I had liked Bone Tomahawk quite a bit. And Bradley, I think, being a little bit different than the other character, but again was a guy who kind of knew who he was, didn't feel a need to talk a lot, you know, wanted nice things in life, and one of them being a relationship with this woman that he loves. I had kind of a specific past for him that had a lot of violence and stuff in it. So that's actually the scene when reading the script that most moved me, because I found it surprising and also authentic that you discover that the girlfriend is cheating, or your wife as it would be, and you're filled with rage and hurt. And so he tells her to go inside. He obviously feels like he can't control his emotions, but he has enough wherewithal. I think he's suggesting in some way that you need to get away from me because I'm not fully in control of how I'm feeling. So she leaves him. He's unable to process what he's feeling, so he takes it out on a car, which I think in a moment people have been mad. Maybe they throw something across the room. But I think his commitment to really methodically destroying the car shows a real ocean of hurt and rage. And then it was the scene afterwards that I quite liked, when you come to find out that there was a miscarriage and the marriage going bad. He doesn't blame all of the infidelity on her, even though she's the one that has, you know, acted out in this way. He's able to hear her and recognize that some of the choices he's been making have not been up to par. And what I loved was that after having this very, you know, honest conversation with each other, he's clearly someone who's both angry and very hurt over this, they decide to become closer. And I really believe that. I really bought in that conversation, through the way that things were discussed, that those two people did become closer, that I could say, wow, this is interesting. One could see the infidelity and the trust being broken as something that would divide them. But in this case, I'm really believing that they're both being able to be vulnerable, and it brought them closer together. And I think that's kind of Zoller in his writings. He doesn't lay out, set up in obvious ways where they go, now I'm rooting for this character. I think the characters surprise you, the stories surprise you, and they feel sort of authentic, but not kind of formulaic.
You better stop now.
I'm fortunate in that I wrestled in high school and junior high, and then I boxed a little bit, just really, you know, staying in shape. But I had done it younger, and then I did it older, just for exercise. So I had a good foundation, but it was demanding. I love the artistry of Zoller and his commitment. He really wanted to make these shots, live in these shots, and have it be us. So it was a bit like choreographing a dance. Like, we're not going to be able to hide and just land a punch and have it work. You had to really be consistent with a sequence that might be 15, 20 moves, and there was really not a lot of room for error. So we sort of rehearsed it. The coordinator was great. Zoller's terrific. We would really practice these sequences, but then ultimately when you get there on the day, you kind of have to go for it. You can't overthink it. So you want to keep everybody safe, and at the same time, you want to have the right emotion going on to make the sequence be as grounded and believable as possible. And it's kind of a weird balancing act because you can't really be too in your head. So there was a couple times I got caught or someone else did, not very often, but we really made the decision to really go for it and err on the side of kind of being a little bit more physical and aggressive, and I think for the film it really works. Freaky. Yeah, I like Chris Landon a lot. He's really good in this genre of kind of horror with comedy, which is not an easy thing to do. So The Butcher was fun. I just tried to make him specific, malicious, kind of a pleasure in hurting people, enjoying it, quiet. And then for Millie, it was really just kind of, studying girls of that age and then building a character that was unique and specific. Here's a girl with a turbulent home life, and I think it's really relatable for all kids that age. You're caught between what your parents think your life should be and what they want for you, and sort of being able to say, this is what I want, and both knowing what that is and being able to give voice to it. And she's someone I think we all can relate to. She doesn't feel confident in school. She's got a crush on someone who she doesn't believe would reciprocate. She's got a really nice group of friends and some close relationships. But she's sort of at that coming of age moment where she's learning to own her own voice and to have some belief in herself. And again, for comedy, I try to keep the character grounded with real stakes, but then in certain, the overcommitment to the absurd is sort of where the comedy comes from at times. And that's really Landon and the writing and the situations that he would put us in.